it's clear that the insights and information and influence that Trump and his team had over voting public was stronger than the Democrats ever thought it was. So it wasn't a landslide. I mean, when the election took place, there were 7 swing states that were not locked up by one side or the other. And basically, in those swing states, the polls said it's a 50-50 toss up. Trump won all 7. And for the first time in years, he won the popular vote. So the Democrats clearly have a lot of soul searching to do, because whatever they thought influence they had with their messaging and the way they ran their campaign didn't work. I think the fundamental problem is American voters are very focused on the quality of their life. They don't care about policies. All they care about is when I go to the grocery store and I have to buy food for the family for a week, can I afford it? And what the Biden administration and Kamala Harris kept saying is our economy has never been in better shape. Inflation is down, again, a macro number. We have more jobs created than in any 10-year period over the last 50 years. And, if you're a construction worker working in a small town somewhere, you don't care about that stuff, right? All you know is when you go to the grocery store, you can't afford to buy the food you need. And the Democrats totally missed that. Gave a lot of high-level theoretical answers, and the public wasn't interested. So it's important to understand that in dealing with Trump, power is important, loyalty is important. When you go back to his core phrase, make America great again, he's inclined to be more of an isolationist. So he wants America to focus on what's in America's best interest. He thinks that America has spent too much money defending other countries and supporting them. He pushed hard against NATO to get them to increase their defense budget. So that's another important part of his mindset. And then the final characteristic is he's transactional. He grew up in the world of real estate. He does deals. And he doesn't think in terms of long-term relationships, which obviously in China is very important in the form of guanxi. So when you sit down with Trump and start to deal with him, you have to understand he's going to look to get the maximum advantage that he can, and is not going to be thinking about long-term relationships. So if that's the character of Trump that he's likely to bring to the table, the next question is, what are the implications for China of how he's likely to govern? So first and foremost, he's going to be very aggressive on tariffs. I think some commentators in the US would say he may be overplaying his hand and underestimating choices that China has. I happen to agree with that. So if you go back 6 years, the US accounted for 20% of all exports out of China. Today, that number is closer to 13%. If you look at the fastest growing countries who are receiving exports from China, they're largely developing countries. And they don't have the alternative sources of products that are being produced by China. And they are the fastest growing population and economies in the world. So the reality is China's dependence on US exports are a lot less than they used to be. And that trend will only continue as developing countries account for a bigger share of exports. There will be a short-term pain for China, but longer term, it's going to accelerate China's push for independence from other countries and to become more able to supply itself whatever it needs. So that's the economy. If you look at the next issue, which is containment, the US said we're going to block China in the following areas, and China has been able to overcome those blocks. If you go back to the fundamentals that China has more STEM students than the rest of the world combined, there's no way China is not going to emerge as, with the US, a co-leader in advanced technologies. So on the side of containment, there's really nothing more the U.S. can do than it's already done. China has shown it can overcome those barriers, and they will continue to do so. The next area to think about is the impact of isolationism. The reality is, China and the US both compete for share of mind of all the leaders of the countries in the world. What Trump has shown is a lack of interest in global institutions, which is leaving a wide open opportunity for China to play more of a leadership role. And then finally, if you look at the relationship of the US with developing countries and China and developing countries, China has led with the Belt Road Initiative, which has enabled it to help developing countries improve their infrastructure quite significantly over the course of the last 10 years. The US's interactions with developing countries is largely trying to persuade them to become more democratic and to provide more human rights. But it's not tangible. Infrastructure is tangible. So I think on that side, China is likely to benefit from a US isolationist posture. All in all, I think that the economic pain for China will be short term in exports, but not longer term. Uh, China will benefit from increased trade with developing countries. Containment cannot get any tougher from the US, and China has showed they can overcome it. And the isolationist posture of the US is going to create opportunities for China in global institutions.